You mentioned about additional investments in certain areas. Myanmar at this transition stage is in need of many things. Are you hopeful that there will be additional investments from international community, from international business communities, and the stakeholders concerned?
I hope and trust that everybody understands that providing resources to solve problems of displacement is a positive gesture, is an investment not only in the future of the people that will return, but also an investment in the future of this nation that brings back its own people. This is very, very important. So from that point of view, I think that those that have the resources and can put resources will do so if there is a guarantee of durable, sustainable solutions.
I'd like to touch the issue of Rohingyas who are in Bangladesh. What do you think of Bangladesh's position on the Rohingya refugees who are stranded for many years in Bangladesh?
Well, of course, the solution for those people lies in Rakhine State. This is where they come from. So work needs to be done there to create a more peaceful cohabitation, coexistence of the two main communities, the Rohingyas themselves and the Rakhine community, the Muslim and Rakhine community. Meanwhile, they are hosted by other countries, those that have left, and those countries are providing hospitality to these people. I'm going myself to Bangladesh after Thailand, and I will discuss with the government further how to best support them in supporting the refugees until there is a solution for them. Hopefully that they can go back peacefully and voluntarily to their country.
You have seen many situations, even worse than what we are having now in Rakhine State. It's a very complex issue that I think you would agree with me. How you would try as Unhcr to bring about reconciliation, to bring about coexistence, to bring about tolerance to differences? Because it is a very tough question for Myanmar as a nation and for the peoples in this country.
I agree with you. This is perhaps the toughest question of all in respect of Rakhine State. And it is not really an organization like Unhcr that can achieve that coexistence, that can create the conditions. Ultimately, it's the communities themselves that have to embrace it. But much can be done to move in that direction. Measures should be taken to lift some of the restrictions that are affecting the Muslim community, like freedom of movement, like access to services. And of course, there is the all-important exercise of verification of nationality in order to grant citizenship to those that are eligible. These are important exercises. These are all recommendations included in the report of the Rakhine Advisory Commission that I hope will be implemented as soon as possible. But there is also a lot of work necessary to consult with the communities, explain why these measures need to be taken, explain why coexistence is much better than intercommunal fighting in order to achieve prosperity for all. But also we need to invest more. I think there needs to be much more development assistance provided to Rakhine State in areas like infrastructure, in areas like livelihoods and employment, in areas like services, health, education, for both communities, not just for one. In fact, in an inclusive manner that covers both communities. I know it's easy to say this and complicated to implement, but you have to start somewhere. And I really hope that the implementation of the recommendation of that commission will be an important starting point to start moving in the right direction.
In a situation like Rakhine State, whereas security tends to take over the issues on the above the humanitarian issue or even reconciliation or coexistence, because there is definitely a security aspect. The border posts were attacked by the militants groups, and there is a security saying that there is a threat to the community and to the local population. So security tends to take over above other issues. With your own experiences in other countries, how would you say on this? How will you, what is your message to us in Myanmar?
There is practically no place in the world which is affected by forced displacement, refugees, displaced people, where the topic of security does not come up and, as you said, tend to take over the conversation. I encounter this in so many countries because, unfortunately, insecurity and even terrorism have become such daily occurrences in the lives of many people and many countries. And states have a primary responsibility in ensuring the security of their own people. So definitely that's important. But my argument is that in doing so, in responding to insecurity with security tools and instruments, don't forget that investing in development in an inclusive fashion, investing in the dialogue between communities, communicating with those communities in a clear manner, explaining what confidence-building measures are put in place, lifting some of the constraints that cause marginalization. These are also all investments in security. And in a community that feels included, that feels that does not feel disenfranchised, is a community that will be much less tempted to embrace any irrational response, any dangerous response, any response that will cause more insecurity. So this also is an investment in security, and we need states to think long-term in this manner as well.
I have one personal question. The world has witnessed more challenging issues with the refugees and migration in many parts of the world, especially in Europe in these days. As High Commissioner for Refugees, are you able to sleep well? Are you able to have some rest facing these challenges, I'm sure, every day?
Well, sometimes sleeping is difficult, but I do need to sleep a little bit, otherwise I cannot tackle the challenges of the next day. But you're absolutely right, it's very worrying. And unfortunately, the harshness and persistence of conflicts, the increasing violations of human rights, the impact on civilians of these situations, the hostility that is growing in many countries for refugees, migrants, even simply foreigners. These are all phenomena that are of great concern. And paradoxically, they are growing in a world in which mobility is also growing. And perhaps because of that, in which globalization has made us all stay closer to each other. And yet, all this has created a feeling of unease, of malaise, which really worries me most. But I hope that our work to ensure that refugees are protected, and in particular, our work to try and find solutions for problems of displacement, the main focus of my visit here in Myanmar. I hope that these will be contributions to move the tide in a different direction. At that point, if that happens, I'll sleep a little better.
Last question for me. As I told you, I was a refugee in India under Unhcr protection for more than 20 years. I did have hope. I did have dream to come back home all these 20 years, and I was able to come back. Thanks to you and Unhcr for all the protection. My question is, do the refugees today still can have that kind of hope and dream to come back to their countries of origin safely with their dignity not affected, with their livelihood to start again?
And voluntarily, one should ask. I think, if you analyze the patterns of displacement, 85% of the refugees, we estimate, have fled in the country next to theirs. And if you take the 66 million refugees and displaced, most of them are internally displaced, so they fled near their homes. What does that mean? Well, in some cases it's that because they cannot go further, but in most cases that because they don't want to be too far, because their dream, their hope is to go back home. That's why it's important to address conflicts, create conditions for those people to go back home. I think most of them hope to do that, and it is our responsibility, our collective responsibility, to create the conditions to fulfill their hope.
Is there anything you would like to add for our viewers and readers?
Just to thank the country for having provided me personally for 5 days with extraordinary hospitality, and encourage everybody in this country to look at these problems with tolerance and vision, because that's the way you build countries and nations.
Thank you, Mr. High Commissioner, for giving this interview, and I hope to see you again back in Myanmar.
I hope so too.
Near future.
Thank you.